What happens when a child's innocent question shakes the conscience of a nation? This is the extraordinary story of how a simple letter from 9-year-old Sarah Johnson inspired Martin Luther King Jr. to deliver a speech that moved millions. Follow this heartfelt journey as Sarah's words remind the world of the power of love, hope, and the unbreakable bond of friendship. Stay tuned to witness how one child's voice changed history forever. The year was 1962, and the civil rights movement was facing one of its most difficult periods. The push for equality had seen progress, but it had also been met with fierce resistance, violence, and doubt. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., sitting in his small office at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, felt the weight of the movement on his shoulders. As he sifted through stacks of letters and documents, a simple white envelope caught his eye. It was addressed to him in a child's handwriting. Curious, he opened it and began to read. "Dear Dr. King," it began, "my name is Sarah Johnson. I'm 9 years old, and I live in Montgomery. My mom says I can't play with my best friend anymore because she's white. She's my favorite person in the whole world, and I don't understand why people are so mean. Can you make them stop? Love, Sarah." King put the letter down, his heart heavy. He had received countless letters of support and pleas for help, but something about Sarah's innocence and pain struck him deeply. Later that evening, King shared the letter with his closest confidant, Ralph Abernathy, as they prepared for an upcoming rally. "This letter isn't just from Sarah," King said. "It's from every child in this nation who doesn't understand why hate exists." Abernathy nodded. "What do you plan to do?" "I'm going to respond," King said firmly. "Not just to Sarah, but to every child who dreams of a better world." King decided to incorporate Sarah's story into his next major speech, hoping to remind the nation of the innocence being stolen from its youngest citizens. As King began drafting his speech, he wondered if Sarah's story would resonate with the nation. Could the voice of a child break through the barriers of hate and indifference? Dr. King sat in his study late into the night, the dim light of a desk lamp illuminating his notebook. Sarah's letter lay beside him, its innocent words a poignant reminder of why the movement could not falter. He began drafting his speech, weaving her story into the larger narrative of hope, unity, and justice. "What kind of nation do we leave for children like Sarah?" he wrote. "What do we say to the children who see hate divide their homes, their schools, and their friendships?" The next morning, King presented his draft to the SCLC leadership team. While most were moved by his inclusion of Sarah's story, a few voiced concerns. "Martin, you're risking the credibility of the speech by centering it on a child's perspective," said James Porter, a senior advisor. "This movement needs bold demands, not emotional appeals." King listened patiently before responding. "James, bold demands mean nothing without the moral foundation to back them. Sarah's voice is a voice of innocence, of purity. If we can't fight for her, who are we fighting for?" The room fell silent, the weight of King's words sinking in. Finally, Abernathy spoke up. "He's right. Sarah's story is the truth we all need to hear." As the team finalized preparations for the rally in Atlanta, where King would deliver the speech, they faced unexpected challenges. Opposition groups had learned of the event and were spreading false rumors to discredit King and the movement. "Dr. King," Abernathy warned, "they're saying we're exploiting children for our agenda. They'll use this against you." King's resolve remained unshaken. "Let them say what they will. The truth will shine brighter than any lie." Meanwhile, Sarah's mother, Mrs. Johnson, wrote back to King after learning he planned to share her daughter's story. "Dr. King," she wrote, "Sarah doesn't know the world is paying attention to her words, but she will be proud to know she's helping people come together. Thank you for giving her voice a platform." The letter renewed King's determination. As the rally drew closer, King reviewed his notes one last time. Standing at the pulpit where he would soon speak, he gazed out at the empty rows of chairs that would soon be filled with hopeful faces. "Tomorrow," he said to himself, "we remind the world why this fight matters." The morning of the rally dawned bright and clear, the sun casting a warm glow over the city of Atlanta. Thousands gathered at the outdoor venue, holding signs that read equality now and justice for all. Families, students, clergy, and workers filled the space, their faces reflecting a mix of hope and determination. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood behind the podium, his neatly typed speech in hand. His eyes scanned the sea of faces, pausing momentarily as he spotted children sitting on their parents' shoulders, waving small flags. Sarah's story was fresh in his mind as he began. Today, I want to share a story that captures the heart of why we march, why we struggle, and why we dream, King began, his voice resonating through the speakers. He told the crowd about Sarah, the 9-year-old girl who couldn't understand why she was forbidden to play with her best friend. He read her letter aloud, pausing to let her innocent yet profound words sink in. Dr. King, my mom says I can't play with my best friend anymore because she's white. She's my favorite person in the whole world, and I don't understand why people are so mean. Can you make them stop? The audience fell silent, the weight of Sarah's question hanging in the air. As King continued, he tied Sarah's story to the larger struggle for civil rights. This child's voice reminds us that hatred is not born in the hearts of children. It is taught. And if hate can be taught, so can love. Tears streamed down the faces of many in the crowd. Parents held their children closer, and even the most hardened activists found themselves deeply moved. James Porter, standing near the stage, whispered to a fellow organizer, "I didn't think a child's story could have this kind of impact. I was wrong." King's voice grew stronger as he delivered his call to action. We must fight not just for ourselves, but for the world we leave behind, for the Sarahs of this nation, who deserve a future where their friendships are not dictated by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. The crowd erupted into applause, cheers mingling with tears as people stood in solidarity. As King stepped down from the podium, the energy of the crowd was palpable. Reporters rushed to document the moment, and supporters surrounded him with gratitude. But as King returned to his waiting car, he received troubling news. Opposition groups were already criticizing his speech, calling it manipulative and unrealistic. Undeterred, King turned to Abernathy. The truth is not always comfortable, but it is always necessary. Let's see how the nation responds. Dr. King's speech, with Sarah's heartfelt letter at its core, spread across the country like wildfire. Newspapers printed excerpts, television programs aired clips, and radio stations played recordings of his powerful words. The story of a 9-year-old girl questioning the divisions of her world resonated with people from all walks of life. But as King anticipated, the reaction was not universally supportive. In major cities, churches and community centers organized events inspired by King's call to action. Parents, moved by Sarah's story, wrote letters of their own, expressing hope for a brighter future for their children. However, critics emerged just as swiftly. Political opponents accused King of exploiting a child's innocence for his agenda. In Montgomery, a segregationist newspaper published an editorial titled "The Politics of Innocence: King's Dangerous Manipulation." The backlash worried some members of King's team. Dr. King, Abernathy said during a strategy meeting, "They're using this to paint you as a manipulator. Maybe we should pivot to a different message." King shook his head. "The truth has always faced opposition, Ralph. But Sarah's voice represents millions of children who can't yet speak for themselves. We cannot abandon that truth just because it makes others uncomfortable." Despite the backlash, the speech had an undeniable impact. In New York City, a group of high school students started a pen pal program to connect children of different races, inspired by Sarah's letter. In Chicago, a coalition of parents began working to desegregate local playgrounds, using King's words as their rallying cry. "If children can see past color, so can we," their pamphlets read. Meanwhile, Sarah's mother wrote to King again, sharing an update. "Dr. King, Sarah doesn't fully understand the attention her letter has received, but she knows she's helped. She told me, maybe my friend and I can play together again someday. Thank you for giving her hope." Within King's own team, the debate about strategy continued. James Porter, once a vocal skeptic, had become one of King's staunchest supporters. "I'll admit, I doubted you at first," he told King. "But this speech, this story, it's breaking through in ways I didn't think were possible." King smiled. "Faith, James. It's what carries us through doubt." As King prepared for his next rally, word came that Sarah's story had reached the White House. An aide to the president reportedly mentioned it during a civil rights meeting, saying, "If even a child can see the injustice, how can we continue to ignore it?" But with growing attention came growing risks. Opponents were ramping up efforts to discredit King and the movement. Abernathy handed King a stack of letters one evening, saying, "We've got support, but the threats are piling up too." King looked out the window at the city lights, his face calm but contemplative. "The dream is worth the fight, Ralph. Always." As Dr. King prepared for his next major rally in Washington, D.C., the story of Sarah Johnson continued to grow. Her letter, and King's decision to center it in his speech, had sparked a nationwide conversation about how racism affected the most innocent among us, children. The stakes were higher than ever, but King knew this was a pivotal moment for the movement. The rally drew tens of thousands of supporters to the National Mall. Families carried signs with messages like, "For the Sarahs of the world," and "Dreams know no color." Children of all races walked hand in hand, a living embodiment of King's vision. As King took the stage, the crowd fell silent. He opened by thanking the many brave individuals who had joined the cause, then returned to Sarah's story. Sarah Johnson reminded us of something we all know deep in our hearts but too often forget. Hatred is taught, and so is love. She dared to ask, "Why can't I play with my best friend?" And today, I ask the same of this nation. Why can't we stand together as equals, as neighbors, as one people under God? King's words rippled through the crowd, many of whom had tears streaming down their faces. As he spoke, cameras captured the reactions of parents holding their children close, young activists nodding in agreement, and elderly marchers recalling their own struggles for justice. At the height of his speech, King declared, "Sarah's dream is the same as mine, and it must become the dream of this nation. A world where children do not lose their friendships to hate, but strengthen them with love." The crowd erupted into applause and cheers. People sang, "We shall overcome," in unison, their voices rising like a powerful wave of hope. Sarah's story and King's speech reached beyond the rally. News outlets around the world reported on the event, emphasizing the humanity in King's message. Political leaders, including the president, publicly acknowledged the need to address systemic racism. Local communities began to take action, organizing events and initiatives inspired by King's rally. In Montgomery, Sarah's hometown, a neighborhood association voted to desegregate its playgrounds, a direct result of her letter. Months later, King received another letter from Sarah's mother. She included a photo of Sarah playing on a swing set with her best friend, a white girl named Emily. "Dr. King," the letter read, "I thought you'd like to know that Sarah and Emily are together again. Thank you for giving us hope when we needed it most." King held the photo in his hands, his eyes glistening with emotion. "This," he said to Abernathy, "is why we fight." Sarah's letter became a symbol of the movement, representing the innocence and hope that fueled the fight for equality. Decades later, her story would be taught in schools, a reminder that even the smallest voices can spark the greatest changes. As King reflected on his journey, he often quoted Sarah's words, "Can you make them stop?" He knew the answer lay not in any one person, but in the collective will of humanity to choose love over hate. Asterisk. This is the incredible story of how a child's simple question became the heart of a movement and inspired a speech that moved the world. What did you think of Sarah's courage and Dr. King's powerful response? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'll try to reply to as many as I can. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of hope, unity, and resilience. See you in the next video. Asterisk.